Microsoft have dropped support for Swagger UI package Swashbuckle in .NET 9. They claim that the project is no longer actively maintained by its community owner and issues have not been addressed or resolved. This means that when you create a web API using the .NET 9 template, you'll no longer have a UI to test out your API endpoints. So is there a way of using the Swagger UI in .NET 9? And is there a better alternative? Let's investigate. To understand what I'm talking about, let's create a new ASP.NET Core Web API in .NET 8. We can give the web project a name, we'll keep it as it is. We select .NET 8 long-term support. And now down here we've got Enable Open API Support. If we hover over this, it states Enables Open API Swagger Support. If we open the program.cs, it's created some configuration for us. It's added these lines here and also these lines here. If we run the application, this is Swashbuckle, where we can test out our API endpoints. We've got the default weather forecast there. It uses the Swagger UI, and we can execute it. It's given us the request, and it's also given us the response. Swashbuckle allows us to test our API endpoints in a .NET 8 project. But what happens if we create a .NET 9 project? Let's do that. We'll create a web API. We'll leave these details the same. We'll select the framework as .NET 9. Once again, we'll tick Enable Open API Support. And if we hover over the I, it says Enables Open API Swagger Support, which I think is a bug, and you'll soon find out as we create the project. If we open up program.cs, some of the lines of configuration have been changed. Like this one here, it's now stating Add Open API. And also this one here where it's calling Map Open API. Let's run the project. When we try to load the Swagger UI, it comes up with a 404 not found. And that is because Swagger is no longer in .NET 9 by default. What they've replaced it with is Open API documentation, which you can view from this endpoint here. It gives you all the documentation for all the endpoints in your API. However, you can't actually test it. So what can we use instead? Well, Postman is a good alternative. We need to ensure that our web API is running, and we need to copy the Open API JSON document link. We then go into Postman, we go to Import, we paste in the URL there, and we can select the Postman collection there, and we import the links. So this has got our endpoint of weather forecast. Notice as well that it's got a base URL there, so it indicates the localhost 7161. That's quite good if you've got different environments. That means you can change the base URL. When you test it, you'll get your weather forecast response. Postman is good because you can test multiple environments. It also stops you from exposing your API endpoints in your application. But what if you want to test them out in your application? Well, an alternative to Swashbuckle is NSwag, which also uses the Swagger UI. Let's have a look at it. We've got our .NET 9 project open. The first thing we need to do is we need to add a NuGet package. We do a search for nswag.ASP.NET Core, and we add that to our application. With that installed, we need to add something into the program.cs. So underneath map.openAPI, we call app.useSwaggerUI. We need to pass in an option. We have to state the document path, and the document path is going to be the endpoint to where our OpenAPI document is. So it's OpenAPI/v1.json without the / at the beginning. And good news, the Swagger UI is now working. We've got the weather forecast and we can test that out. And it gives us the response from the weather API endpoint. NSwag also provides NSwag Studio, where you can generate code based on your OpenAPI document. So we can copy and paste our OpenAPI link, and then we can select C# controller. And this gives us a number of options like the namespace, whether we want a partial or abstract controller. We're going to select partial. A couple of other things like the controller class name. We're going to call that weather. And there's many other configurations that we can set. If we click on the generate outputs, it gives us some of the code. So it's given us an iWeather controller interface. It's also given us a weather controller class, and it gives us the endpoint for the get weather forecast. In addition to that, it's also given us the weather forecast class, and that gives us the properties like the date, the temperature, and also the summary. The good thing about NSwag Studio is that you can use it with any OpenAPI document, so you can import the code that you need if you're calling an external API. More information on how you can use EndSwag is on the Microsoft website. There is also a link for it in the YouTube video description. Of course, if you don't need code generation or you don't like change, you could just simply add Swashbuckle back into your .NET 9 project. To do that, you could create a .NET 8 project and copy the configuration files from that into your .NET 9 project. Alternatively, you can follow these steps. In our .NET 9 project, we need to add a NuGet package. So the NuGet package is swashbuckle.aspnet core. We add that to the project. In our program.cs file, we need to remove any references to the Open API. So we'll remove that one and we'll remove that one. We'll replace it with builder.services.addEndpoints API Explorer. And we also need to add the Swagger gen. With the web application instance, we need to call use Swagger and also use Swagger UI. That's added Swashbuckle into our .NET 9 project. Let's just make sure it works. We've done a request to the weather forecast, and there's the response. So Swashbuckle still works in .NET 9 like it does in .NET 8, but there's a much better alternative to that, and it's called Scalar. Like the others, we need to add a NuGet package. The one that we need to add is scalar.aspnet core. And like the others, we need to add some code into program.cs. We need to import the scalar.aspnet core namespace into it. And then underneath map open API, we call map scalar API reference and run the application. When running our web API, we go to /scalar/v1. It opens up the Scalar UI. And this gives us a lot of extra functionality that Swagger didn't provide. So for example, we've got this client libraries, got many different languages here, and what this will do is it will generate code based on our web API endpoints. So we select HTTP client and C#. By scrolling down, it's given us the code to call that web API endpoint and return a response. In addition to that, it's given us things like a sample 200 response, which it gets from the Open API document. Also gives us the model and all the classes and the properties and the comments that go with that. And of course, we can test it out. So when we click on test request, we can set things like the cookies, the headers, and the query parameters. And if we send a response, we get the response back with all our details from the API endpoint. We can set options for it as well. So we're going to set the title. So we're going to call it My API. We can also set a theme for it. So it's got a number of themes that we can choose from. We call Scalar theme. I'm going to select Blue Planet. And another thing we can do as well, we can decide whether the sidebar's on or not. We're going to turn it off. So the title has changed, as you can see in the tab up here. And also the theme's changed. We've now got a more sort of navy blue theme for our documentation. I think it's clear to see why they dropped support for Swashbuckle when you compare it to Scalar. The UI looks better, it has code generation, and there is much more functionality when testing API endpoints. If Postman is more your thing, then watch this video next. The video goes through how to create CRUD methods in an ASP.NET Core Web API and how you can test them in Postman to get a response. And let me know in the YouTube comments which method you're going to use to test your API endpoints.